Hey everyone, welcome back to the Hoops Post Up. We're here to talk Spurs once again, and you might see on the bottom there, we're going to talk about the next Spurs legend. What could that mean? Now, you might have caught our other episode. We just talked about Tim Duncan, of course, entering the Hall of Fame, and that was a pretty obvious call there. We knew for a long time he was entering the Hall, probably pretty much since his rookie season, I think, right?
Yes.
Now, he's not the only Spur in the Hall, and he's not the only Spur who's had his number retired recently. Of course, the big three, Manu and Tony. So the question is now that the Spurs are getting younger and possibly younger than we think they will be, depending on what happens next year, who is going to be the next great Spurs player to have his number retired? Maybe not necessarily Hall of Fame, right? Maybe not that level. I'm not saying they have somebody on the roster who's going to be an
No,
all-time great. I mean,
don't see that.
you don't see that.
No.
But is there a player who could take that next step to being remembered as a great Spur?
Okay, obviously we're coming off of a disappointing year with our Spurs season. It ended short, and thank God it did, because it was pretty painful to watch. I feel we have some pretty good players on the team, but I don't know if we have that next legend. Like you're asking me about that. Who's going to be the next Spurs legend? Who's going to be the next Spurs player to get their jersey retired? I'm thinking back on this season. I'm thinking back on the last couple of seasons.
It's got to be somebody. Now, here's the thing. It was, okay, disappointing because obviously we know Spurs and playoffs that go together, right? 20-something years, every year in the playoffs, of course, the 5 championships. So that's, I think, not just the fact that we're used to seeing them in the playoffs, but the fact that this team should have been a playoff team, right? We don't know what's going to happen, but obviously I don't think the regular season is going to continue.
No, no. Well, no, I don't think it will either.
I mean, that's it. The streak is over.
Right. 22 consecutive seasons in the playoffs. And for me, the last few years, it's been lacking, obviously. Do we have talent on the team? I feel like we have some talented pieces, considering who's on the roster. But I don't know why it's not working for the team. Do you think it's coaching? Do you think it's players? Do you think it's a combination of players?
It can't be coaching because when you have probably the best coach, I would say second best coach, of course, Pat Riley, the GOAT, but one of the best coaches in NBA history, it can't be coaching. I mean, he's older, so what? That's not it, okay? He's still a great coach. It's not talent. That's the thing. That's what made it so disappointing. This team, I mean, think about it. They were being beaten out of the playoff spot by Memphis, right? Memphis' best player is who? A rookie, all right? John Morant, good player. They have good young players, but they are really, really young. That's not a team that should be better than the Spurs.
Right.
You have guys like Aldridge, you have DeRozan, who are, several-time All-Stars, perennial All-Stars almost. Not every team has that, even one All-Star, much less two. And you have good young players in place that are just as good as the players on a team like Memphis or Sacramento, who are with the same record. I mean, there's no excuse for them to have the record they did. Why?
Do you think it's the style of play? Do you think the way that the game has changed and the players we have?
I think that's what it is. I think it's not, I don't want to say coaching per se, that it's something like he's not doing a good job. I think that maybe there has to be a mind shift. Just like they did such a great job at shifting their style of play to win that championship in 2014 against Miami, right? When they just outsmarted them. All right. It wasn't about talent. Yes, the big three were there. Miami had their own big three who was younger in their prime with Bosh, LeBron, and Wade. Okay, so they didn't outperform them because of talent. It was because they outsmarted them in style of play. And they can't get away with that anymore because the league is so young and so athletic. And the Spurs have some players who just, I don't know. I feel like they're in between because they have some really, really young players who are good and some really experienced, I don't say old players, but guys like Rudy Gay is a good player, but he's not the fastest anymore.
Marcus is 34 and DeRozan is 30,
right.
So they're getting
they're
up
just not
there,
in their prime
but they're
anymore.
not exactly. But that's what I think of. When the Spurs won, they were not in their prime. They were old. They were considered old for that time. And they didn't think that after 2013, any of them were coming back. The big three. They didn't think they were coming back.
Yep.
So thinking about that, thinking what they were able to do, and then thinking about this season and our next legend, like who is going to be that player? Who's going to make that much of an impact in the game on our Spurs roster.
And that's what's so interesting is you have those kind of extremes. Again, not super old, but you have veterans who've been around, who, if they stay and play out their careers in San Antonio, a few more years, could establish some pretty good numbers that are comparable. They could make them all-time Spurs leaders in terms of points and rebounds and such. All right, and then you have the guys who are just starting their careers, have so much potential that if they stay Spurs, they could become, I mean, you don't know, could become the next all-star. And so let's take a look at each of those guys and figure out, well, who has a shot, right?
Okay, because I have like a set of 5 in my mind right now, and I have some opinions about some, and then...
I bet you do.
Yeah.
All right. So actually, we're going to start with, maybe this is an easy one. If you guys have been paying attention, you saw our latest episode on DeMar DeRozan. Basically, the question is he even going to stay? Is he going to be a Spur next year? So that's question number 1, and the answer is...
I think he's gone. I don't think he's staying.
It's kind of hard to be a legend if you're not like on the team, right?
For some reason, I don't know. Maybe he's just messing with me. And maybe I shouldn't watch his Instagram account. Because when I see him unload all these pictures and I see nothing about the Spurs, I mean, when you're on a team, you like chant. You like display affection for your team. Like it's plastered all over, right? And he has nothing. It's blank. It's a blank canvas.
Reading into social media during the off season is a really, really tricky thing to do. But it could mean something, could mean nothing. If you want the whole breakdown on that, again, check out our episode on DeMar DeRozan. Will he stay? Will he go? We don't know. And maybe he doesn't know either. But remember, he has that player option. So we go into detail about that.
Is he going to be our Spurs legend? My answer to that is no.
So the gut feel, short, is there's a good chance he doesn't stay, and we just assume he would. Financially, it would make the most sense, I think, because he locks in that, $27 million, of course, and then he still has flexibility the year after to be a free agent, but maybe he's just not, well, they say he's not happy. I don't know about that, but...
Do you think he has the potential to be that legendary player?
Let's play what if, yeah.
Yes. Because when I'm thinking back on my Spurs years, right, watching, I think of a couple of players who I would compare him to.
Okay.
And for me, I think of Mike Mitchell. Those of you who know the Spurs team, back in, he played for us in 81 through 88. Okay, 1981
a little before my time, but
1988.
As a Spurs fan.
So I think of Mike Mitchell, and his numbers are pretty comparable to DeMar's, right? I believe close to 20 points per game, averaging. Let me see, where's his minutes? I'm looking for their minutes. Yeah, pretty much the same. Yeah. 34 minutes per game for DeMar, 32 points on average for Mike Mitchell. And yet, Mike Mitchell started half of his games. He only started 400 and something games in his career versus DeMar. DeMar had 800. He started, and for me, when you think about that, then I think his numbers should be better. Then I think his numbers should be off the charts.
They could have been. I mean, again, a little different era, but still, at that time, Mike Mitchell was still one of their better players. I mean, 20 points a game, especially compared to nowadays, right? You have a lot more guys scoring higher numbers. That's pretty good. And the usage rate is not that different, 27 versus 25% usage rate. So Mitchell was pretty close. DeRozan, of course, though, has been counted on to be the main scorer at Toronto pretty much. Throughout his time there, and now even with the Spurs this year, I don't know what you can call it, their leading scorer. But the fact that you consider comparing him, his closest comp as a Spurs, Mike Mitchell. Does Mike Mitchell even have his number retired?
May he rest in peace. He does not.
And maybe, I mean,
he does not. And I think
maybe he should.
Exactly. I mean, no offense, little general, but you've got your number retired. I'm looking at Mike Mitchell's numbers, and he should have it.
And very similar also career arc, because Mike Mitchell started out with Cleveland, played a few years there, and then played his last 7 years with the Spurs. So DeRozan, his first several years with Toronto. What if he plays his last 6-7 years as a Spur? Is he just another Mike Mitchell?
Well, the way I'm seeing it, yeah, I don't see him as being that top tier player, that number one, that superstar that he could be. I think he has the potential. I don't know if it's a lack of confidence or an insecurity. That's what I see. When he plays, sometimes he's on fire and sometimes he's driven, and then other times he seems to be in his head.
And don't forget, because you say, well, what are you talking about? DeRozan had a great year. You know, he had that crazy streak of games where he was scoring at least 20 points.
Player of the month.
Player of the month, shooting over 50%. Yeah, he led the Spurs, but don't forget, that came after a really slow start. I mean, after the first month of the season, like, what's going on here? That's why the Spurs started in the funk in the first place. And yeah, he put up numbers, but were they winning? Mm-mm. So talk about making, guys better versus just putting up points. Now, I know DeRozan did his part. He did what he did, right? But even if he finishes his career, plays another several years with the Spurs, which we both don't think that's going to happen.
I don't.
Maybe not even one more year. But even if he did, would that make him, guy that they're going to hang up DeRozan's number in the rafters?
I guess it would have to be on the outcome of every season, right? Does he take us to the semifinals? Does he take us to the finals? Does he take us? It would depend on that.
And maybe this is unfair to say, but I mean, never took the Raptors to the finals. Do you think after age 30, with the team that they have now, do you see him taking, if he is the focal point of the team, even if LaMarcus is still there, look at what happened this year. Is that going to take them to the finals?
He hasn't done it yet.
I don't see much rings, going on those fingers necessarily, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. But let's just say right now we're guessing no, DeRozan isn't going to finish as a Spurs legend.
Right. If you disagree with us, go ahead and leave some
Maybe
comments.
we're wrong. Maybe he does. I mean, that would be great, right? We'd love nothing more than DeRozan to win a championship in San Antonio.
Absolutely.
But not guessing that's going to happen. Now, what about LA? This is different because he's been there longer. And let's talk about the fact that he's a guy who is, kind of solid and steady, not going to jump off the page at you. Maybe not even their number one option now that DeRozan has been their leading scorer. But Aldridge has the potential.
He has
the
potential. That's what's so frustrating to me. No, it's so frustrating to me because he has a potential. And you see him light it. Like that one time he's like, oh, well, I had to show these young guys who. And he was on fire. He had an amazing game. I think it was 38 points that game. Like, okay, so if you have the potential and you have the ability, then why don't you show up every time with that kind of fire and conviction?
That would be nice. He's a little unsteady. It's funny because we think of him as kind of that steady but unspectacular, but he's got his ups and downs too, right? He'll disappear sometimes. Most notably in crunch time in big games, he's not a guy who takes over the game, okay? But we're not going to try to project championships or anything. Let's just talk about if he stays, right? He finishes his career in San Antonio. Potentially will have played as much as he did in Portland. He could be on the leaderboard there for Spurs, all-time top 10 Spurs in terms of scoring, rebounding, right, games, all of this. Okay, but Aldridge, I mean, he's already just barely this year cracked the top 10 in points scored as a Spur. I mean, if he just plays a couple more years, he's got a chance to move up there near, well, it'll take a while before he moves up near David Robinson, but top 5.
Sean Elliott had his jersey retired, and he's number 8.
Right.
So, but he also won a championship with us.
And then that's the thing. You have guys, like you mentioned, Avery Johnson, Bruce Bowen. I mean, they're not anywhere on these leaderboards because they weren't
not.
Statistically, no, they weren't even all-stars. But why are they up there?
I think what they did for our community as far as Avery Johnson is concerned, him being the leader in the locker room, having that leadership quality about him, everybody liked him in our community. I mean, if they didn't retire his jersey, I think the community would have been up in arms.
So is Aldridge that same type of player in San Antonio?
I think he's done great things for our city.
But is he viewed the same way? Fair or not, is he viewed that same way?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. I mean, we know that he's kind of one of the best Spurs, but he's not. But I think
it's just his demeanor. He's just quiet.
Yeah, like Tim Duncan, very low-key. And I think if it wasn't for the championships, Tim Duncan might be kind of forgotten because his greatness is underappreciated, right? Because he's so effective, so efficient, just like we talked about in our Tim Duncan episode. Aldridge is a very similar type of player and type of guy.
I know. The game is over, and you look at his stats, and it's like, when did that happen?
Yeah, how did he score 30 points? I don't even remember that, right? So let's talk about career numbers. You might be surprised, Tim Duncan, 19 points exactly per game for his career. LA, 19 and a half. Now, here's the thing. Tim Duncan started playing in the 90s. In the early 2000s, that was an era of defense. right? The scoring was not the same. And of course, Aldridge playing nowadays. So you have to kind of take that for what it's worth. It's like home run totals and baseball errors.
It skews Tim's numbers a little bit.
Okay, but then let's keep looking here. Okay, rebounds. Timmy, 10.8 per game. Aldridge, 8.3.
What stands out for me is his, rebounds and his blocks.
The blocks, double the blocks, 2.2 game per Tim, and Aldridge 1.1. So the defense also, of course, Tim known as one of the greatest defenders ever for his generation at his position, and Aldridge not. All right, he's not a bad defender. I'm just saying it's just not the same level. So the numbers are kind of close, but I mean, I think it's pretty safe to say we're not going to say that Aldridge has a chance to be the next Tim.
Yeah.
Defensive win shares, Tim Duncan for his career, 106.3, and Aldridge so far 41.1. And defensive box plus minus, there you go. Aldridge is at a negative 0.3. So not terrible. He's not bad. He's about even, but not a plus defender.
No.
Okay, so that said, I think we established LA is not going to be the next Tim Duncan.
I don't think he's the next Spurs legend.
If he gets his number up to where he's top 5 all-time scorer for the Spurs, he spends 10 years in San Antonio. He's one of the rebounding leaders. Is that enough to make him considered an all-time great Spur?
Gosh, it's just so frustrating because I think he has the potential, but I don't see it. And he's been here how many years now? And it's just not as consistent and as dominant as I would want him to be. Now, a couple of those years he was sharing the ball with Kawhi. I get that, but
do you think he stays and retires a Spur?
It's interesting. I don't know. He might go back to Portland.
I think there's a lot better chance than with DeRozan, but yeah, I don't think it's a slam dunk either. So, all right, now those are the established guys, the ones that we know have a really good chance to finish with those numbers. But now let's get to the interesting part. Let's talk about the young guys. Who has that chance? They're just totally projecting here, right? Because the numbers aren't going to mean anything because we have guys who've been playing 1 or 2 years and that's it.
Right. But they're obviously making an impact on the court that we want to talk about them.
Oh, yeah. These are the players we want to be the next great Spurs. So what do you think? Now, Dejounte Murray, a lot expected of him. Of course, this year, you can kind of throw the numbers out the window anyways because coming off that serious injury, right? Didn't play at all last year.
They were managing his minutes early on in the season. It was hard for him to get his groove on the court because his numbers, his minutes were inconsistent.
And again, I feel like he showed flashes. Like there's sometimes he would step up and go on a run, or he'd score a couple in a row, and he was just flying up and down the court. And there's sometimes he just kind of shrank and disappeared too. Do you think he has the potential though? I know you could say, well, everybody has the potential, but do you think that realistically Dejounte could be another Tony Parker? It's okay to say no. That's what I'm asking. Do you see him at that level? Because again, Tony wasn't a lottery pick, right?
They are such different players, right? And their bodies are so different. I could say that Dejounte could be there. I really could. When you say flashes, his flashes are pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm. Some people think he has that ceiling to be maybe an all-star contributor, right? Maybe not every year, but again, like a Tony where, you
put some meat on his bones.
Yeah, well,
a little slanky.
But this era, it's not about overpowering guys. Trust me. We're watching some of those hardcore classics and, the 90s where guys are just backing each other down. That doesn't even happen anymore, right? You're just jacking away from 3. But maybe Murray has to work on his shot, but Tony had to work on his shot. He couldn't hit a 3 the first few years of his career, at all, and he had to change his game. And so that's why when you talk about 2014, right, those finals, he was shooting a 3 with confidence.
Yes.
So
I think Dejounte has the potential.
All right, has the potential, but we need to see more, right? I think it's safe to say we need to see more.
Yes.
All right, need to see more. Want to see more of.
Lonnie.
Lonnie Walker's son. All right, Lonnie Walker, the fourth. Now,
you gotta put that up.
We'll always love Lonnie, of course, from the U. And we know that he definitely has the physical ability to.
Oh my God, his athleticism.
His athleticism off the chart.
Beautiful. Oh my God.
And he's shown he can go from basket to basket. He can take a fast break by himself.
Take flight, right?
That's right. The Skywalker, Rise of Skywalker. So we know he's got the speed. We know he can hit the 3. He's got the shot. He's got it all physically. Is he ready to take that role and to be a primary scorer, to be, a player who kind of steps up if DeRozan leaves?
When I think of these players that we're talking about in this episode, this is my guy right here.
No.
If anyone's going to be a legend on our Spurs team, this guy has everything. Everything. He's got defense. He's got offensive strategy and like manipulation when he spins and turns and explodes.
He's not one-dimensional at all. Exactly.
No.
He's got the moves. He prefers to, fly up and down the court, right? But that's going to change. He'll realize he can't necessarily run by everybody every time.
I like to watch it.
But yeah, I think with proper coaching, which he has, I mean, eventually they'll kind of rein him in. It's kind of like with Manu. Right? I think the best comp is Manu, where he
Well, they were
pops
trying
pulling
to
his hair
rein
out,
him
like, just
in.
slow down.
And they were trying to rein him in.
But-
And then they had to realize, no, we need to let Manu be not Manu.
Right.
I say let Lonnie do Lonnie.
That's what I'm saying. More Lonnie could equal more wins. But there's that fine balance, right? I mean, he can't just go crazy up and down the court. I mean, he's got to know when to pull it back, when to take a smart shot, when to pass it. But
He is my go-to, my desire to be our next legend.
definitely me too. Now, here's the question I have to ask, and don't want to scare you, but is he going to stay with the Spurs long enough to be a Spurs legend, or is he one of those players that kind of gets developed after a couple years, the rookie contract is up, gets
They're not
offered
going to
a
let
big
this guy
contract?
go. They're not going to let this guy
Spurs
go.
don't like paying up for,
They'll pay up for this guy.
Okay, so he's going to stay a Spur. That's the most important thing.
Yes.
Okay, so Lonnie, we're counting on you. Next Spurs legend, cemented.
That's right.
All right, but there's one more guy we want to talk about, actually, and this might surprise you, but think about Derrick White. When we talk about the Olympics, right, the World Cup teams and all these international competitions, Derrick White is a guy they've gone to, and we know that Pop being one of the coaches, he must think pretty highly of Derrick
Loves
White.
him.
Definitely a surprise. He also, kind of like Dejounte, has looked good in flashes. And remember at the end of last year when Dejounte wasn't playing, and in the playoffs, he looked
had-
pretty damn good.
Yes, he did.
But does
he
he
had some
have-
fire in his belly?
But and he's got the athleticism, right? He's got great handles. He can shoot. He's not the most consistent shooter yet. But do you think he has the ability to really up his game more, or is he kind of is what he is?
We've got the best shooting coach ever.
That's
Chip.
for sure.
Chip.
Chip and
Yes. Just,
Okay.
He just needs a little more time with Chip. It'll come.
so if he develops that outside shot a little bit more, be a better scorer.
And his defense. How many steals? I mean, his defense is amazing.
That's true.
He
That's
is
one thing
quick.
you look.
He is fly. I mean, like, just
Well, actually, don't forget the blocks. 'Cause that's one thing I know they talk about all the time. Matt Bonner loves to point out that Derrick White loves to at least get one block a game. He's working on that. He makes a conscious
he
effort.
has, yes. And that is his game time goal.
Yep.
Each time. He wants
Block
to see
some
if he
shots.
can block some shots and get one better than the next.
And of course, he's not this athletic, but again, his game, kind of overall game as a guard, reminds me a little bit of D Wade in that sense that he likes to block shots. He can hit the three, but he doesn't rely on it. He loves to play in transition, right? And he gets other guys involved. He's not always looking for his
He
shot.
has that competitive edge. He's never
Yes.
giving up. He
Yes.
gives it full press every time he's on the court.
So Derrick White, again, those numbers that kind of go unnoticed in the box score, right? The blocks and the steals, here and there, he contributes as a guard. Not necessarily going to be a 20-point scorer, right? But he doesn't have to be if he's
No.
getting other guys involved. So, I mean, you compare him to a guy like Avery Johnson. I mean, he's going to put up better numbers, I think, over his career than Avery Johnson. Is he going to be part of a championship team? That's the question, though. So I feel like his ceiling is definitely not as high as Dejounte.
Right.
He's not quite that level of athleticism and hustle, but he's a solid guy. Do I think he's going to have his jersey retired? No.
No.
But I do think he's a little underappreciated.
Yeah.
Would you say that?
Yes, I agree.
Okay. So to wrap up here, so far, we say the next Spurs legend, DeRozan,
No.
LaMarcus.
No.
You know what? I have a hunch he's going to stay. I think he might eventually get his jersey up there, but I don't know if I would call him a
Wow.
legend because I think it's going to be based on career numbers.
He has the potential.
He's a compiler. Let's put it that way. He's a compiler, which is not bad, but it's just, it's not legend status.
He needs to take it to the next level. He needs to wake up. He doesn't have much more time on his legs.
You know what? If they shake things up and they get the right mix, you never know. He's just not a number one, right? He's not an alpha dog.
Right.
What about Dejounte?
Dejounte would be my number 2 out of this
Number
list.
2 choice. Okay, I think so. He's my number 2 because of course, number 1 is
Lonnie.
Lonnie, he's already a legend in my book. I just need his jersey. And then Derrick White, no, but he's going to be a solid contributor. Hopefully, I really hope the Spurs do keep him.
Yeah.
Because that combination, if they have Murray and White on the floor at the same time, I think that's pretty solid too.
I do. I agree.
This team, if you have that young core, right? You have Murray, you have White, you have Walker, right? Athletic at the guard position. And then what else do they need?
One more defensive stop.
Need some defense. That would help. They need a big man. In this era where there is no position and centers don't exist.
I mean,
but
we
you
got
need something.
outplayed on boards. Outplayed.
Out rebounded almost every game. No interior defense. Like, I know you don't need a star center like you used to back in the day, but they need something to help on the inside, right?
Yes.
We already talked about LA's defensive box plus minus. So, all right, guys. Well, that's what we think. Next Spurs legend. What do you think?
Make sure you comment below. Thank you so much for watching today. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell.
That's right. The latest Spurs talk. We're going to be here all off season, however long it lasts. We're here to talk about Spurs and basketball, all things NBA. Follow the Hoops post up.
We are here to put content out for you. So if you want to see something, hear us do something different, let us know. We're here for you.
Thanks for watching.
All right, everyone. Peace and love. It's not the Rudy Gays.
Oh, man. The cheap shot at Rudy Gay.
Sorry.
Yeah, Rudy Gay I don't think will be the next Spurs legend.
They're very comparable.
Very close. Tim Duncan, 19 points a game for his career.
Comparable.
LA, 19.
That's another thing. Okay, let's edit. Oh my God.
It's a thought. Just keep going.
No.